And I'm excited to be able to extend a warm welcome to each of you in attendance. And I hope many of you will be able to join us tomorrow when we have a longer program. And we're having the keynote tomorrow and a panel on reproductive justice. And so the panel tonight is Standing Strong for Environmental Justice, and the one tomorrow is Standing Strong for Reproductive Justice. So we're really leaning into this Standing Strong theme. I want to thank the NC Now board for being the planning committee, plus Carol Olinger and Kathy Greggs, both from Fayetteville Now, have been really helpful. And I also want to thank Lindsay Barth, who's been our Zoom tech on a number of events. She's fabulous. And my board. So in some ways, it's nice to attend events on Zoom because you don't have to go anywhere. And it doesn't take the extra time and the overhead, and you can look stuff up, you can save chats. It's kind of nice. So, but we do miss being together in person, because what we normally do for our conferences is have a conference different places, different years, so that we're getting all over the state and also hanging out in person and exploring a little. And so it's definitely a different experience doing this from home, but it's good for now. And one of the main things we do with our conferences is have elections, but we really like doing the workshops and the panels and associated. So we're really excited about our program, and think you will be too. Tonight we're having Gerrie Richards and Chapel Hill Now put together a panel on environmental justice, and we're very excited to see what their experts have to say. And then we have a set of workshops that are today instead of tomorrow. They go from professional skills like Advocacy 101 and talking to legislators and congresspeople, to personal, expanding personally this Disappear Upset in 5 minutes with Penny DePaa. So I hope you've come to learn more about us, but most of all, to help us grow our organization that will include you, your interests and your abilities and your dreams for a better future for all women and allies. So that is my welcome speech. Is Crystal? Well, Crystal was going to speak, and she may end up coming later. She is continuing in school and had as a research project missing and murdered Indigenous women, and her research started her off on like kind of a career, but major effort to get this problem seen and addressed. And so she and her husband, and I know the Women Advance women directors have been very involved in doing first in-person marches and events that moved to online with the pandemic. And I've been involved in the last 2 years of them, mostly talking about the Violence Against Women Act, because that's something Now is always very involved in. And I've been involved in that before. And how it ties in, because some changes are specific for Indigenous, not just Indigenous women, but Indigenous women and men. And there's some shocking holes in the legislation, in the Violence Against Women Act, that we've been trying to get addressed. And she actually has started a database to track these cases of missing and murdered Indigenous women. So a lot of us, we just saw that Faith Hedgepeth was finally, they supposedly have found her murderer. She was murdered in what, like 2012 or something? And in her case, I think that the police really were doing their job in her case. But there were a rash of murders in Lumberton in 2017 that were clearly murders, obviously murders, couldn't be anything else. Like one of the ladies was found naked, upside down in a trash can. Okay, you can't do that to yourself. You wouldn't do that to yourself, but like physically, I think it's impossible. And they didn't classify them still. They're not classified as homicides as of at least 6 months ago, or the last time Antoinette Carr looked at it. You know, it's just unconscionable that these obviously linked, obviously homicides aren't classified as such. There were 2 women murdered at the same time, and then the police talked to a third woman who was later murdered. So, you know, there in Lumberton, it seems to be a problem with the police not doing their jobs. And they were, you know, classifying, you know, they're victim blaming. That's what they're doing. They're victim blaming. And so it's a major problem. And then it turns out that all the police departments have a lot of doing what they can, just autonomy to decide what to do and how to do stuff. There isn't anybody in charge of making them do their jobs properly except voting. They're elected, and so they don't report to like Josh Stein or anything useful like that. And so when they go off on and decide not to prosecute or classify murders properly, the way to get them to do it is to get rid of them and hope the next person will do it. So, you know, there's just some interesting ways in how North Carolina works. So let me see. Crystal is here having trouble with her internet. And so, Lindsay, I wonder if we could run one of the videos that we sent. We have some cute videos.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and let me try to work out with Crystal to get on.
Do you have a preference which ones are shown?
One of the voting ones for now, or yeah, one of the voting ones.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna show one. I think it's about like the ERA.
Oh, okay. I love that one.
Okay.
If it's a legitimate rape, the female body has ways to try to shut that whole thing down.
Back in my days, they used bare aspirin for contraceptives. The gals put it between their knees. Rapunzel was bored of waiting for a prince to come and save her. So she ordered a ladder with Prime one-day delivery. And started a hairdressing empire, obviously. Prime changed everything.
And it wasn't that costly.
Women in the United States of America make only 77 cents for what men doing the same job make.
He said you could argue that money is more important for men.
5 men are testifying on women's health.
Where are the women?
The companies who make these try to trick the girls into buying the pink stuff.
It's possible she just passed out in the elevator. I don't know.
I will slaughter every single spoiled, stuck-up, blonde slut.
A war on women, for God's sake.
Is there a war on women? And if there is, what does it look like? I decided to take a look, one issue at a time, starting with our all-time favorite, money.
This really is a war against women. You had the attacks on women's reproductive health care, and then you have this onslaught of slashing all these programs that women who are being paid 53 cents to the dollar or 59 cents to the dollar or 77 cents to the dollar who can't catch a break.
Most women I knew weren't looking to catch a break. In fact, if they weren't making it, they figured it was their fault. Women are now 47% of the American paid workforce. 66 million women are working. But aside from feeling empowered, how are they actually doing in the marketplace? Pretty badly. 42 million working women are slipping into poverty with their children.
Our next guest says there is no such thing as a male-female wage gap. In fact, she says there's evidence that women actually make more money than men.
Politicians shouldn't be trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist.
But exist it does. Studies from the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the Department of Commerce show that women are still making between 22 and 57% less money than men are, adjusted for their race. Across the country, women were living on the edge.
Okay, Crystal is sending me her speech because she is having technical difficulties with her bad internet. And then we will go into the okay. If I don't have it right now, then otherwise we'll just go into the panels, but I think I'll have it. So that equal means equal trailer, raise your hand if you've seen equal means equal. Okay, lots of us have seen it. If you haven't seen it, it's rough to watch, but it's pretty fabulous. And, you know, I think it's probably worth your time to watch it. But that's my favorite trailer. And they also have not just the equal means equal, which is an hour and a half long event, but also we have like a 30-minute version, but definitely the longer one is better. Okay, here it is. Okay. Okay. Make that bigger. Okay, so all right. Okay. So here is her speech. Although, Gerrie, would you prefer we do this after your panel?
I think we could go and do, everybody is here, so I think we could go and do the panel. All my panelists are available. Some of them are showing that they are muted. So I asked Lindsay to unmute them, or can they unmute themselves? They should be. Okay, Chandra just did.
Okay. All right, let's go ahead and do the panel.
All right, let's do the panel because you did the video and then we can come back, okay?
Yep, and then we'll come back.
Yeah. All right, good. All right. So, are we ready? Okay. All right, so are we doing speaker view?
I think, Gerrie, as everyone speaks, it's just gonna automatically show you because everyone's muted, so you'll be good.
Oh, okay. All right, well, I'll start. Everybody, if people don't know what I look like, it's probably better. Thank you.
We see you. You look beautiful.
Earrings and everything tonight, but I'm seeing Galia on the screen, not myself as I'm speaking.
Are you using speaker view?
I believe so.
Or gallery view? Try gallery view and see what you get.
Okay, there's gallery, but let me go from there to speaker. If not,
I see you, Gerrie. You're fine. Just go ahead.
Oh, okay. All right. So that will work. All right, good. All right. Well, hi, everybody. We're getting ready to start, and welcome to the Environmental Justice Panel. I'm Gerrie Richards, and I am the president of Chapel Hill Now, and I was very lucky to have some really good people to help me organize this. On behalf of North Carolina Now, I'd like to welcome our 4 panelists, Amelia Covington, Deborah Maxwell, Professor Daniel Spurlock, and Chandra Taylor. This is how we're going to do this tonight. All right, each of the panelists will have 7 to 10 minutes to speak about her work. All right, during their presentations, the audience will be muted. However, at any time during their presentations, anyone in the audience can put a question into the chat, and you can identify a particular speaker, or you can just make your question to the entire group. And I do hope you'll take advantage of that opportunity. I will be introducing panelists and getting things started, moving us along, but Virginia Carson is actually going to moderate the Q&A. She's another member of Chapel Hill Now. All right, so I think we're all ready to get started. And our first panelist this evening is Amelia Covington. Amelia is a field organizer for Climate Action North Carolina. This is a project of the League of Conservation Voters. She has been a grassroots activist since her college days at American University. So Amelia, we're looking forward to hearing about your experiences and what you have to say. Go ahead.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for inviting me here, especially to speak alongside all these other incredible women leaders in the environmental and climate justice movement. As was mentioned, I'm Amelia, work at Climate Action NC. And our mission is to build a world with clean air, clean water, public lands, and a safe climate that is protected by a just and equitable democracy. And before I speak further, I also want to acknowledge that I'm calling from the occupied indigenous lands of the Lumbee tribe and the Tuscarora Nation, the ancestral names for what is now called Raleigh. And the fight for climate justice, of course, is nothing without the leadership of Indigenous people, past and present, who have stewarded this land and continue to do so. And if you're curious, I do invite those joining to see what lands you're living on. You can do so at native-land.ca. So for me, my kind of journey into the climate and environmental justice movement for years, and I assume this is not uncommon, I was under the false impression that environmentalism was sort of unrelated to other political struggles. Oftentimes, I think we think of environmentalism as a polar bear in a distant Arctic region dying. And it was really only until I attended college that I learned the rich history of the environmental justice movement, which started right here in Warren County, North Carolina. And learning about the environmental justice movement opened my eyes to what an environmental and climate movement really should and could be. One that addresses the real human costs of our crises and centers historically marginalized populations. My re-education at the time, as was mentioned, I was at American University, also coincided with the first time that I really experienced climate anxiety personally. At the time, back in North Carolina, my own friends and some of their families were temporarily displaced as storms were battering the coast. We were experiencing these natural disasters. So at the same time that I kind of was confronting sea level rise in my home state that kind of felt inevitable, I also was inspired by these social movements of the past and present that I was learning about in school. So my challenge was, what can I do? I knew that individual action alone was not enough, but I also couldn't throw up my hands and do nothing in the face of an existential crisis. I attended enough teach-ins to learn that to organize, you need to join an organization. So I decided to join Fossil Free American University, which is a student organization fighting to divest American University's endowment from fossil fuel companies. And as a student whose tuition money was funneling into this institution that was then investing in fossil fuel companies, I felt like I had a responsibility and power to act. And I built some incredible relationships along the way with my fellow student organizers and learned firsthand how important solidarity is, especially with so many other social justice organizations on campus. And while we were all feeling the effects of climate anxiety, especially as young people trying to, imagine a habitable future, we knew that our anxiety would be even worse if we didn't try to do something. So after hours of planning meetings, tabling, and holding rallies outside of Board of Trustees meetings, no matter what the weather, even in the snow, American University announced full financial divestment from fossil fuel stocks in 2020. And so this was a really incredible achievement, one I didn't know if I would see. And though I had graduated in 2019, the year prior, it was really incredible to play some role in that success. And a great reminder that we really can win if we do persist. And I also want to note that this was by no means a short fight. It was 7 years in the process, but still really incredible. So disrupting the whitewash narrative of environmentalism many of us were fed, environmental justice and climate justice, redefine the environment as where we live, work, play, learn, and worship, as well as the physical and natural world. Environmental and climate justice reminds us that while climate catastrophe will ultimately affect us all, wherever we are, its effects hit historically marginalized communities, communities of color, and low-income communities first and worst. Environmental and climate justice in this way is really inherently connected with feminism. And I think Audre Lorde, a legendary Black feminist, may have said it best herself when she said, "There's no such thing as a single issue struggle because we do not live single issue lives." I think another way to think about these intersecting issues as offered by ecofeminism is that the same systems of domination and oppression that are present in patriarchy are present in patriarchy and these environmental injustices. Until we address and dismantle the root causes of the climate crisis, the web of colonialism, racism, classism, and sexism, we can't really chart a truly sustainable future. And women and girls are among those key vulnerable populations that are uniquely impacted by the climate crisis, but we are also a key part of solving it. So if we take seriously feminist alternatives, we can move from the extractive economy predicated on exploitation that we live in today to a regenerative economy that's guided by an ethics of care and cooperation. So I'm excited to hear from the other speakers, and thanks again for letting me speak.
All right, thank you, Amelia. Appreciate it very much. All right, so let's move on to our next speaker is Deborah Dix Maxwell. She is currently the president of the New Hanover County NAACP and in North Carolina NAACP District Director. She is also on the board of the Cape Fear River Watch and on the League of Conservation Voters. Okay, Deborah. Okay, Deborah, I know.
Oh, I just heard, I saw the message. Good evening, everyone.
Okay, great. Thanks, Deborah. Go ahead.
Could go wrong technical. It has gone wrong for me today, as Chandra knows.
I understand that. I'm always there. I'm not going to say anything because you know what happens as soon as you say it. All right.
Something else happened. That's what. So I thank you for this opportunity. Amelia, before me, thank you so very much for what you did. And to speak about a topic that is very close to my heart. And so I bring you greetings from our national president, Derek Johnson, and the North Carolina NAACP president, T. Anthony Spearman. Thank you so much. And one of the quotes we have at Cape Fear River Watch, which means a lot when we work an environmental issue, is a river is powerful because many drops of water have learned the art of cooperation. And that's what we have to do when we're working with environmental climate justice, cooperate and work together. And when I heard you mention the title, Standing Strong for Environmental Justice, I'm part of a small subset. There are only so many African-American women who are in the struggle for justice because life is not a crystal stair for us. When you're concerned about how much food is going to be on the table or whether the rent is being paid, sometimes the environmental justice issues, even when they're closest to home at you, they're close to your heart, but you may not have the time, the energy, or the capacity to work with things. So sometimes it does not occur. The reality is people are generally NIMBY about environmental justice issues, not in my backyard. And all of a sudden, when it's in your yard and it impacts you, you become more aware and conscious. So how did my journey begin? It began with the introduction by my river keeper, Kemp Burdett, who was also with Cape Fear River Watch, where I'm now a board member, as you mentioned. I heard that there was a plant named Titan that wanted to build a cement plant down the road from me. And Kemp approached me as the NAACP president, introduced the information to me. I started attending events, reached out to others because someone reached out to me. And I say that because where would I have been on this journey if Kemp had not reached out to me? This allowed me to speak out against Titan and understand what particulate matter meant and teach others from a plant that would have contaminated the air quality of my household that at that time had a child with asthma who loved to be outside. The Optimus ballpark where he played was around the corner, so dialogue with other parents who were also concerned began. And then it was going to contaminate the Northeast Cape Fear River. The journey for justice and environmental justice in my community began with Titan Cement. They also lost their permit request in March 2016, which is a victory for the people. Water is important everywhere, but even much so in a coastal community like mine. It determines the quality of the seafood and the level of tourism, which I must admit means a lot in this area. Sutton Lake was built because of the need to cool water from the coal used by the plant. Our other panelist, Chandra Taylor, is just a great gem of information, and I would have declined if I'd known she would have been on here when I saw earlier, because she has been instrumental in so many of the environmental justice and environmental climate justice struggles that have occurred in this area. But please remember, I'm just a social worker. The state had no signage at the lake, and there were high levels of selenium in the fish. Remember, catching a fish may be recreational to those of you and now, but it is sustainment and life-bearing for some people in this community. And so there had to be a solution. The neighborhood beside it was a lower socioeconomic neighborhood. Water had to be delivered in special wells. Because there are so many of these plants that have proliferated in this state, you probably participated in a protest or some other measure of displeasure towards Duke Energy. Then there are losses, and we stand strong. With the Dogwood Alliance supporting us, my friends in historic Sunset Park were waging opposition against a pellet holder that was in viva biomass. To this day, in my humble opinion, this should not have been allowed. But we know that money talks, which is why we have so many environmental justice issues that we have to stand up for. The trees they use sometimes are not mature. We need every tree we can get back, as lack of trees due to development has caused major storm water drainage issues in this area and probably yours. Recently, there was a small town, we have a lot of small towns around here, named Acme Delco, or called ADR because of its close proximity to Riegelwood. Because of the lack of oversight, this small rural community almost became home to a tree bark plant that was going to use methyl bromide. Mind you, the potential plant owners were from Australia where this chemical could not be used, but it's fine to bring it to the United States. You never go into a battle alone. I have two friends, and we call ourselves the EJ Sisters. And that is Veronica Carter, who's on the board of Coastal Federation, and Ashley Daniels of the Sierra Club. The first community meeting was in a classroom at the middle school. So many people were present that we had to relocate to the gym. The next meeting was purposely at a local high school, which meant it was not within the community. This is deployed when you have your fight against environmental justice. Relocate the meeting to where people need transportation. It did not deter them. They came in force. We registered 30 people that night. They created a Facebook page, and local members had a chain for information. After consideration and hearings, the permit was denied. Nearly every action in this area has had the support of Chandra Taylor. So I'm thankful for her and her organization's support, and I will enjoy hearing what she has to say later. And if I took one of your topics, Chandra, you know you will do it better than me. There are environmental justice issues everywhere, but imagine living in a small town with multiple, not one, but multiple Superfund sites. And let's not mention the brownfields. Welcome to Nebraska, a small Black town that has had only 2 mayors since incorporating. The site of a cleanup of the former Kerr McGee site right now. Currently, the plans include a cultural center, as the town is at the northern part of the Gullah Geechee Commission. We stand vigilant that this quiet town does not allow toxic commercialism to invade its soil again. Intersection means that we must continue to work on environmental issues. I am here on the shoulders of Sister Naima Muhammad, who I'm sure at some point y'all have had speak, as she is over the North Carolina Environmental Justice Network. Without the shoulders of her guiding me, sometimes I would not get along the way in what I'm doing. So I'm appreciative of this effort of point to speak with you, because it is so important that we intersect, that no matter how we look, that we support each other with environmental issues within our neighborhood. Speak with your neighbor. That's how I became involved. Kemp spoke to me. Don't think that someone does not want to hear you. If you have an issue in your neighborhood, speak to that person in the grocery store. You never know who you will impact. So just remember, I'm just a little old coastal Carolina girl who loves quotes. And one of the quotes that I truly love, which is so apt for tonight, is from Margaret Mead. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens could change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. That was wonderful. I'm glad that you're here. I think we all have something I'm pleased that you feel humbled by this, but I'm really glad that you are here. All right, our next speaker is Professor Danielle Spurlock. Professor Spurlock is an assistant professor in the City and Regional Planning Department at UNC Chapel Hill. Her work focuses on the intersection of social equity, environmental protection, and policy. And I think we've heard that word intersection quite often just with our first two speakers. So I think, and I know it's familiar to a lot of people here. So please, Professor Spurlock, tell us about your work.
First, thank you so much for the invitation. And thank you to both Amelia and Ms. Deborah. Ms. Deborah, I never want to hear you say that you're just a social worker. My education in environmental justice has always been at the feet of Black women. So you're central to the movement, and I never want to hear you diminish yourself. I came to my current discipline, planning, through public health. So I want to give thanks to and appreciation to the Student Minority Health Conference at UNC. First, it brought me to UNC. I was living in California and couldn't actually visit. So seeing students that were that engaged about health disparities is the reason I moved back across the country. My mother's from Northampton County, so I knew North Carolina well. It introduced me to environmental justice. It's at the conference where I met the concerned citizens of Tillery, the North Carolina Environmental Justice Network. And then it nurtured me as a leader when I was able to serve as conference co-chair on a conference called Health in the Built Environment. It occurs the last Friday every February, so please, please, please consider attending. My affinity for planning and public health stem from their focus on prevention. Conceptually, the efforts in these fields might never actually be seen if we were actually optimizing them, functioning at their peak. Unfortunately, they don't. We see health disparities and structural oppression clearly written on our social and built environments. For that reason, my research focuses on community engagement, the quality of policy, and how we implement that policy, so we can create more equitable social and built environments. Too often, we ask, and when I say we, I mean we as society, ask marginalized populations and communities to prove that the system is exploiting them or that they are being put at a disadvantage. But then we will reject their data, their stories, as just stories. I actually had an elected official say that I don't want to hear any more stories, I want to see data. And yet data is actually that human experience, that lived experience is the data that we have about our social interactions, about our interactions with the built environment. So my work with my community partners is to amplify those stories while also integrating them with the technical expertise that the larger systems demand. It's not to at all diminish those stories, but it's also in many cases to play the game because they almost always are backed up by the data if we have the opportunity and the methods to do the analysis. My work, though I have and continue to do a lot of work looking at what many folks, many of the presenters have talked about, which is the placement, the negative impacts of hazardous land uses like landfills, like the pellet and Viva plant that I know quite well, the coal ash. Much of what I want to talk about today is also on the other side of when we think about environmental injustice, the denial of basic amenities and those types of green infrastructure that improve our social and built environment. An example is a study I completed with a former student who I am inordinately proud of, Carl Kolosna, on urban tree canopy. In community conversations, the lack of trees, heat, green space were often highlighted as concerns, not only because of the aesthetics, but also a concern about climate change, about increasing heat temperatures, about urban heat island. But that was always at the intersection of displacement. Much of my work is in urban areas. So communities were concerned when they start seeing trees go in, what that meant about them being able to stay within their neighborhood, because that reinvestment, often by nonprofits or by the city, to plant new trees, to refurbish different parks, was followed closely on the heels of displacement, of gentrification. Our study looked at 12 different communities split between Chapel Hill and Durham. 6 were historically Black and 6 were historically white. When we say historically Black, they are not just red line communities. This is an ongoing soapbox issue for me in planning, that we often look to red line areas as we should, as this very bright line of systematic racial discrimination and oppression. But there's only about 150 maps throughout the country. Chapel Hill doesn't have one. Raleigh doesn't have one, but they most definitely have racialized space. It does not take a map. You can talk to any person, any elder that has lived in these communities. They know where the bright lines and the boundaries of their communities were. And they also know about the decisions to systematically deny capital, to deny insurance, to deny infrastructure that their tax dollars were supporting in other neighborhoods. So we were looking at these communities and focusing on urban tree canopy, knowing that urban tree canopy, if we see lower levels, we're going to see higher heat, higher energy burden, as well as associations with diseases like asthma and cardiovascular disease. We not only found what we expected, quite unfortunately, that in these historically Black neighborhoods, there was a statistically significantly lower level of urban tree canopy. This is something that is not unique. What we really wanted to highlight is the fact that our current policies were in no way, shape, or form going to be able to remediate it, in part because our current policies treat everyone equally. So this is the pitfall of policy campaigns that seek or have a definition of fairness that really is, we will treat everyone the same, but everyone's starting point is not the same, particularly for communities, for infrastructure, for capital. They are already starting way behind the start line. They are in incredible deficits. So having policies, in this case, the same policies applying uniformly across these cities meant that they would never catch up. There was never going to be enough attention on new development to bring back urban tree canopy, nor with the increased attention to many of these historically Black neighborhoods around redevelopment, many of the vacant lots that were providing some types of tree canopy were going to be built on. And there were no standards because they had previously had houses on them, there were no standards to retain much of that urban tree canopy. So what I want to leave us with in this larger conversation is we need to shift the burden of proof from demonstrating harm to proactive evaluation of our plans and policies. We know these policies were created out of systems of oppression. Whether it was explicit or implicit, it is played out in how we have shaped our social and built environment. So it is our responsibility to, one, stand by those who are most impacted. I work with a community-rooted organization in Durham, Communities in Partnership. Check out their website, communitiesinpartnership.org, that is doing amazing work to really build within the capacity on the issues that are most important to their neighbors, while also taking on the larger challenge of systems change. We need to stand with these organizations, amplify their voices, as well as holding our elected officials and those who aren't elected, because planners aren't elected, to a higher standard in their practice, to have them prove to us that what they do does not continue our historic levels of discrimination and disadvantage. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. We have one more person, and you've heard her name a couple of times, I think, in this, and now we'll get to hear from her directly. Chandra Taylor. She is a senior attorney at the Southern Environmental Law Office right here in Chapel Hill, very close to where I live. She specializes in water quality and environmental justice issues. So Chandra, please tell us about your work at Southern Environmental Law.
So good evening. It's nice to join you all this evening. So again, I practice law at Southern Environmental Law Center. We are a regional nonprofit law center. We have about 90 attorneys on staff. Our staff is about 140 people. We have offices in North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, and Washington, D.C. So I am in our Chapel Hill office, and we have several different program areas and a real focus right now on doing all that we can in the next 9 years to combat the impacts of climate change. So doing all we can to prevent more CO2 from going into the air and doing all that we can to sequester CO2 that is in the air right now. My work spans a number of different environmental justice issues across the state and also across the region. Part of that work is partnering directly with other nonprofit groups, including groups like the North Carolina Environmental Justice Network, where Danielle and I were on the board at the same time several years ago, as well as partnering with Cape Fear River Watch and river keepers all across the state. So I think it's perhaps helpful to think about an environmental justice framework as an environmental justice framework, and think about that also in terms of other matters that come up where, as interested people in the state, where if there's an environmental issue that you are concerned about, that by the time an environmental issue that you're concerned about gets to SELC, then we are probably at the point of, really extreme advocacy, and it may be helpful just to know how that process works. So as an environmental law center, we take on cases that benefit the public good. So we represent groups of people. It would be very rare for us to directly represent an individual, because we have to take on cases that have a public benefit. That's part of one of the ways that that's part of one of the requirements that we abide by as a nonprofit. With the tax protections that are afforded to nonprofits. We do not charge anything for our services. We do work in the state legislature. We do work in state legislatures across our region, in Congress, trying to keep good legislation on the books, do all that we can to prevent legislation that would cause environmental harm. And that's just through educating the members of our legislatures, through drafting policy memos, having direct meetings, going to the legislature with our partner groups on the issues that we're concerned about. We also interact directly with regulatory agencies. So all of the governor's cabinet, if there's a regulatory agency that has some influence or responsibility toward the environment and public health, then we reach out to them as they are drafting regulations, as they're making decisions about permitting. A very common way that we do our work is when there is a new proposal, perhaps, for how a particular contaminant should be regulated. Then SELC is there doing the research about the most protective set of regulations for public health and the environment. We comment to the agency about their proposed regulation. We point out areas where there may be something that's unlawful. So we're setting up a case that either results in, sometimes the agencies listen to what our suggestions are and they make revisions. And in certain cases, if we have pointed out, something that's unlawful and it remains that way in the finalized rule, then there may be a basis for a lawsuit. And then we bring lawsuits on behalf of partner groups, like Yadkin River Keeper, like Concerned Citizens of West Baden Community. there's a number of different organizations that we have brought litigation on behalf of, and that is the last way that we interact. So we engage with the legislature, we engage with agencies, and the last step typically is litigation. Because litigation takes a long time, is really costly in terms of time and in terms of the investment. It's the last thing that we want to do, but it's often a very powerful tool to enact change. So Deborah Dix Maxwell mentioned litigation. Well, she mentioned coal ash as an issue. That is a issue that we worked on in the state of North Carolina. First starting, I think the first actual lawsuit in the state of North Carolina was at the Sutton Steam Station down in Wilmington. At some point, we had litigation with regard to all 16 coal-fired power plants and the coal ash that was on site. We got the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights to come to North Carolina with regard in particular to coal ash at the Stokes in Stokes County at the Belews Creek Steam Station, because there was a environmental injustice issue. So whenever there's a lever that we can push to get to the ends of justice, we're looking to that. So, we're in the State Office of Administrative Hearings and Litigation, in state court, in federal court, and in front of forums like the United States Commission on Civil Rights. If there is an environmental issue where, you're looking for, where you think that there could be a benefit to partnering with a group of lawyers, then please think about a partnership with Southern Environmental Law Center. We evaluate whether or not we can get involved in matters after having, conversations with whoever our partner groups are on that issue. And litigation is always the last step. There are several steps that come before that in terms of getting to an end to try to stop environmental harm or trying to reverse contamination that has already taken place. So I'll stop there because there may be questions that can get addressed in the time that we have remaining. So thanks for your time listening to me, and thanks to the other presenters. I really enjoyed hearing from you.
All right, thank you, Chandra. And that's where we're going next. I'm going to turn this over to Virginia Carson, and I can see that there are some questions in the chat, so I'm going to let her deal with that. Thanks,
I've
Virginia.
been following these, and I also want to thank our speakers. I certainly learned a lot, and your work is really inspiring to all of us. One question that several people raised, and any of you can respond to: what is the most effective way to reach our local politicians, state and local politicians, to motivate them to take action on these environmental issues? What has been effective for the work that you've done? And any of you unmute yourselves and chime right in.
I think the way that a number of us, I think your question is like, what's the most effective way to engage with local elected officials? Certainly it's showing up at those, I think it's showing up at those county commissioner meetings or at the city council meetings, and I think coordinating public comment, requesting the opportunity for public comment when decisions are being made. That's really powerful when there is a clear, when the community is clearly organized, when you're able to bring in other members of the community and, en masse deliver your comments on whatever the proposed plan is that your elected officials are taking on. I definitely think so. We need broad policy. We need policy that's, coming from, our international regulatory bodies, because climate change is an international issue. But there are a lot of local level decisions that can make your day-to-day life better by just kind of stopping a land use change, stopping, like if there's a determination that a potential piece of property is going to be zoned as heavy industrial, is that appropriate for that site? Because once an area is zoned as heavy industrial, then that's kind of locking in a certain type of development that's perhaps not sustainable. And I say that fully thinking about the fact that there are lots of industries that we need, but I think it's helpful to be thoughtful about how land is going to be used right where you are. So I'll stop there.
Now, I would say exactly echo and amplify those statements, particularly about planning. It is going to meetings, having sharpened your social justice lens enough that you can see the breadcrumbs of something that is potentially going to come about, particularly for a number of uses, land uses in North Carolina. If they are constructed as economic development, you might not hear about it till much later. They can have a lot of those conversations behind closed doors in service of bringing economic development to an area. For that reason, it is looking for the whispers of your social network or someone saying something early enough that those who are organized, those who are most impacted, aren't always so far behind the timeline where money has already been invested in the site. They're already getting ready to rezone. They're already having built a coalition amongst the elected officials or people who have social power. So I think it's listening, but also thinking about how you might be connected to those who have land, so that you hear about even those uses or those changes of uses that aren't announced. That was the case, I think, in Greene County when they were going to put in a slaughterhouse. It was folks hearing about it, because when I went to go look at the meeting minutes, it's all gone. It's all behind closed doors. It took people hearing about it, organizing, and then coming to meeting and saying, this is an inappropriate use for its location.
Anyone else want to chime in? Miss Deborah or Amelia? Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I would just chime in really briefly to say that it's about, I think often we hear with public comments that it's about the quantity, and that's so true, but it's also about the quality. So it's really important to have a unified but also personalized message that you're sharing. So these elected officials or other decision makers do understand that they can't dismiss it as like, oh, this is just one organization's mission. To really see that people have different angles of approaching issues, and their own personal stories, I think, is impactful.
Okay.
I believe in the power of coalition, that when you go to city council or something about we are not by ourselves. The Sierra Club's with us, Coastal Federation, Coastal Land Trust, and when you go as a group, you decide who's going to lead, who's going to do what part, which officials will be most impacted, that we can sway the most. And that is very necessary because we're almost out of land in this county anyway. And that's, true. Green space. And so that's how we do it here. And then also approach your officials from Raleigh. And my senators and stuff, they know my emails. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you all. Professor Spurlock, there's a question for you. Are there volunteer groups that plant trees in marginalized neighborhoods? And is that an effective response?
It is and it isn't, in part because for those organizations that are coming from the outside, they need to have built trust. Too often the organizations, because both Keep Durham Beautiful, Trees Durham, are white-led organizations, which means they then are going into historically marginalized communities saying, hey, we can plant trees. Yet we remember that association around green gentrification, where when the new trees, when the new attention comes, it often means that I'm pushing out low income communities and communities of color. It also, and because we haven't built those relationships, when folks say no, it plays into this larger myth that Black and brown communities don't value green space in the same way, when any number of surveys finds exact opposite. The willingness to pay, the willingness to, usually the willingness to pay is used as how much of their tax dollars, how much more would they pay to protect these spaces? It's much higher than some of their white counterparts. And yet there is this myth that they don't value it because in the whole scheme of issues they're advocating on, it might fall below making sure that I can stay in place because housing affordability is an issue, maintaining and working against food insecurity. So it is all part of a larger system that says, well, if you don't value it, maybe we won't invest in your parks. We also have to be wary of systems that depend on volunteer labor, because volunteer labor is in the US, it's a class privilege. So volunteer labor means that I had the time to give, I might have actually been able to retire, which is a wonderful thing. My parents are really enjoying it, but that means they didn't have the time. So depending on volunteer structures means that time, I have been very disappointed with park systems that are dependent on outside funding, meaning we can fundraise for this park that we're interested in. But what if those same resources aren't then applied to areas that have been historically disinvested in? So it's really thinking, again, that default model that we're looking to use to address these problems, where can it reinforce systems of discrimination and inequity?
I think that's actually very thoughtful and something that comes up often when people are trying to help and they don't realize that help isn't always welcome, or what they perceive as help isn't always welcome. So thank you for that. Deborah had a comment, and if you would like to, Miss Deborah, expand on that as well, please go ahead. You're muted. You're muted.
I'd like to speak with Dr. Spurlock. I got your email because we do have a local tree commission here, and everything you said is exactly what happened. They contacted me to reach the Black community because when they went out without making that contact, young lady said, "Oh, plant the tree." Her uncle said, "Take that tree out my yard." Also have to remember that we had Florence. So we had major tree damage. So there's a lot of hesitancy, not only because of being African American, but because of the fear, how big is this tree going to be? So we're having to educate people about the size and what type and the need for stormwater drainage, because we all got taxed extra down here on our county taxes for stormwater, so that it will have an impact.
I study stormwater, so definitely send me an email. I think it's also important what Ms. Deborah has brought up about tree damage. I don't know who on the call has ever had to pay for any tree work. We recently had some done. Tree work is incredibly expensive. One of those ways that you can start building those relationships isn't, let me come in and help and build. Like, yes, we do want to plant new trees, but also offering aid for the existing trees that are in the yard that often are placing the structure or cars in harm's way.
We had a comment as well about how to go about empowering particularly women and girls and reaching women and girls to be involved in environmental issues. If anyone wants to speak briefly to that.
I can talk a little bit, but I'm definitely curious to hear from other panelists. And none of what I'm saying is particularly original. So want to give credit to all those who have kind of talked about this work. I'm thinking of All We Can Save. It's a great kind of anthology of women leaders in the climate movement who've come to this. But I think in one sense, we can expand what we think about when we're talking about climate solutions. It's not just, someone building literal green infrastructure, building a windmill, something like that. It's also when taking the steps to limit the worst effects of the climate crisis, we kind of need to broadly just change how we operate, or at least we should do what we can to transform and implement feminist values into a new economy and a new world. And the Climate Justice Alliance has a really great graphic demonstrating a move from this extractive economy based on exploitation to a regenerative economy based on cooperation. And a lot of what those other climate feminists that I mentioned talk about is revaluing care labor. Care labor is, long historically performed by women, and at the same time kind of deemed as like inessential when it's in fact essential to everything else in our economy and world working as it should. So things like education, nursing, just caring for others, childcare, other caregivers for elderly. These are low carbon jobs because quite literally they don't produce much carbon dioxide or other greenhouse gases, and produce little waste, have a limited impact on the environment. But they're also essential because in those roles you have a unique ability, I think, to kind of have an impact on other generations and have intergenerational communication. With educators, for example, we always need teachers, but even more now, teachers that can teach our youth the overlapping climate, racial inequity, and economic crises, how they are interconnected, and also what we can do to dismantle them. So I think revaluing how we approach labor is an important part about that.
Okay, thank you. We're almost out of time, but 2 quick questions for our esteemed attorney, Ms. Taylor. One is, how have you seen the work in North Carolina change over the years? And are you suing the Chimor plant that is upriver from Wilmington?
So I don't know if there's a litigation approval for that plant. So unfortunately, I cannot answer it, but if somebody wants to follow up, I can ask my colleagues who are working on that issue. On the first question that was asked, how have I seen the work change? I would say from the perspective of a person working at Southern Environmental Law Center who entered this field knowing that I wanted to make sure that we were delivering legal services to the African-American community in North Carolina, that SELC has been doing that. Like, that's just part of what the work has been. But I would say in terms of how I think 2020 and the murder of George Floyd and really a national racial reckoning has been important in terms of people being willing to talk about racism. Environmental justice is really, it's a way of watering down, saying like systemic racism and disproportionate, at the disproportionate harm on communities of color that you heard about from Amelia and everybody else on this call, that people are more willing to just call it what it is and to start thinking more expansively about actually dealing with it, rectifying it, not just aiming for equal, but aiming for actually getting people who are, not at the starting line. You've heard all of the panelists have talked about this. If you're way behind the starting line, there's a need to do something additional and different. So I would say that is the biggest change, is the willingness to address environmental harm and systemic racism together.
Thank you. There are a number of comments saying how much people enjoyed this panel. So our thanks to all of you. And very helpful, very interesting comments, and I'll be thinking about them for quite some time. Gerrie, I'm giving this back to you.
That's great. You know, I always like to have the last word, but I just want to repeat again how pleased I am with the willingness of our panelists to present information, to listen to questions, to give us a solid basis. I think we could talk about, clearly we could talk about this a lot longer, but you certainly have given us a lot to think about. And I hope that at some time in the future, we'll be able to get more deeply into these issues. So you folks may be hearing from me again. I want to leave with just, there were many things that people said that I think we can continue to think about. One of them that I heard and wrote down was the importance of stories. And I think stories are especially important for women and for what we're doing, because we share our experiences through stories. And although many people find that to be less important, I really think it's a very strong message when you share stories and when you present stories. Amelia said something earlier also that I'd like us to remember as we leave this, and also go into the other work that we're doing this weekend and the other work that we're doing through now. She said, we can win if we persist. And we have been persisting for quite some time now. So I know that we will continue, but that's a worthy message to keep in mind. And then Miss Deborah, I hadn't heard this before, but I've written it down and I'm going to put it someplace where I will see it every day. You said a river is powerful because many drops of water have learned to cooperate. That just gave me a boost. So thank you, and thank you all, and thank you for the wonderful questions. Thank you for being here this evening. Thank you to NC Now for letting us put this together. And I'd also like to thank my Chapel Hill Now team that worked to help me pull this panel together: Virginia Carson, Denise Matthews, and Laura Flicker. I couldn't have done it without you. Thank you. Okay, Gail, it's your turn.
Yes, that was wonderful. We're so thrilled to have everybody participate and speak and share their knowledge. Really enjoyed this. So the next thing is we're going to move into workshops. And so most people are signed up for workshops, but if you're not signed up for a workshop and you want to stay, we would love to have you. You never know what you might find out. I put here in the chat, there's a link to the workshop names and descriptions. And so if you're not signed up and you want to stay, we'd love to have you. Text or, chat with Lindsay on what workshop you want, and it'll go in there. And to finish up about the missing and murdered Indigenous women, because there are so many cases and nobody is keeping track of them, Crystal made a database to keep track of them. And so that is available at mmiwnc.com. And what it is they want to open it for Indigenous women and Indigenous people to write about records of missing women and girls. And so that is a new thing this year because of a hole that they noticed in reporting. Nobody's tracking it, so she started her own thing to track it. So that's what you have to do sometimes. We're having another speaker tomorrow about They started a database to track police misconduct because that's another problem that isn't being tracked. So that is our next thing. We hope you will return tomorrow when we have our keynote speaker is Representative Julie Von Hafen, who is amazing, who's a great advocate for women education and healthcare, which we need. And she's a strong advocate. She really speaks very well and writes very well. And then we're having a panel on reproductive justice, standing strong for reproductive justice. So please do return tomorrow. But yeah, if you would like to stay for a workshop, then text Lindsay with what workshop it is and she will set you up, or chat, do the chat with Lindsay on what one you want and she'll set it up. And that is our next move. And we are pretty much on time. I would love to see Chemours sued. They are, these cases of these companies just doing the wrong thing and continuing even after they're called out. It's terrible. So if you are already signed up, you don't need to do anything. It's all handled. Okay, so we'll have a little transition break. You can, run to the ladies' room or whatever, or the men's room. And the break rooms in Zoom are kind of magical. You just kind of get moved into a room and then you only have communication with the people that are in the room with you. And so we have the 4 workshops that people are going to.
Yeah, so I just wanted to let everybody know before we go to breakout rooms that once you get there, you will have the ability to unmute yourself. So I have made that option available. And then also, if you add anything to the chat, just make sure to save that, because that won't, once you come back to the main room, it won't be available. So if you see it, like there's a little 60-second warning that comes up before you're about to be put back into the main room. So just make sure to save the chat then if there's anything that you want to keep. But other than that, I'm just going to open the rooms and everybody's just going to magically go into them. So.
Oh. Carol, to answer you, the sponsor slides were showing in the first half hour. They could show again now, but I think we might be in process. Lindsay, can you?
I can put everyone in a breakout room and then just have the slides up when everybody comes back, but I can't really do it at the same time.
That's fine.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna add everyone. I'm gonna open the room, so you're all gonna go now. Okay, Gerrie, could you tell me what breakout room you want to go to?
Are you asking me?
Yes, because it was not on the spreadsheet.
I want to go to the one about presenting public comments.
Okay. Just a second and I'll.
Okay. Sorry, I thought I had done that.
Oh, no, it's okay.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. This is the end of our evening, but we'll be back bright-eyed and bushy-tailed tomorrow morning. The registration opens at 8:30 and the opening plenary begins at 9. And so we hope to see all of you. Does anyone want to share anything they learned in their session? Ethelyn, you gotta unmute.
This is Ethelyn. I want to say I learned a lot from Penny in the breakout room during our particular session, disappear upset in 5 minutes or less. And we gave the example as to how what might upset us. And she had 2 people, myself and someone else. And it was very informative. And really, as I was telling her, it helped me even in that short time. And she's gonna send us the print out of the skills that we learned and what we could do to help ourselves. So I really appreciate being in there, and I'm happy I signed up for that workshop.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. Anyone else want to share what you learned or what you did? Okay.
I will, Galia. I thought Diana's workshop was excellent. And I think that Denise will agree that she was very well prepared. Things were really easy to understand, and she went through everything that we would need to know. And I think we're psyched to go and make our voices, amplify our voices in public. Right, Denise?
Yeah, you know what? We should have really talked about Diana's thing specifically in the environmental justice event. That would have been perfect.
I think the two together go very well, because there are certain things that are coming up and other issues. And I've wanted to learn more about what's going on right in Chapel Hill. So now I kind of have a sense of how to do that also.
Right.
So I appreciate that. Very helpful, Diana. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Gerrie and Denise. Galia, I have a question. Will these workshops be available like on YouTube or something? Were they recorded?
Mine showed that it was recorded. And so if we can, I think what we need to do is pull them apart and put them up there in separately. And so if Lindsay can help do that, we will do that.
Well, Galia, I'm just going to interrupt and tell you that Zoom doesn't record individual breakout rooms. It only records like the main room. It doesn't have the capability to do that. I mean, if you wanted to have workshops available, what you could do, the best option would be to ask presenters to maybe just like take a video of themselves like presenting or something, and that might be a good way. But yeah, it's not, the recording is just the main breakout room. So during that session.
Okay. Well, I will say, if anyone's interested in learning about, some tips and strategies for presenting public comment, I did a variation of this as a webinar for the League of Women Voters of North Carolina. And it should be on their YouTube channel. So the League of Women Voters of North Carolina. And there are a couple slides with a couple bullet points specific to the League of Women Voters, but the rest of it is applicable to anyone, because I was primarily talking about what you do, whether you're a private individual or whether you're speaking on behalf of an organization. So if you're interested, you can go there and get a lot of the information.
So I think you sent me an email with that information, with a link to your webinar, maybe.
I may have. I'll send it again. I'll have to look it up.
Okay, because that's great. That's wonderful. Okay, so Zoom's magical, but doesn't do every single thing. Okay.
I wanted, this is Carol. I wanted to say that I had an awesome time in Advocating 101. I learned how to lobby, and she had these really cool slides that will help me stay focused when I'm trying to get my point across. And she showed us how to get on the website, and we can look up voter information, and we can see exactly who is representing us. And I liked the whole thing. I always learned something.
Great, thank you. Okay, one last share. Anyone else want to share? Okay, we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Oh, go ahead, Penny. Yeah.
I don't know if it got in everybody's chat. We present disappearing upsets on Thursdays from 6 to 6:30 every week, and I put the Zoom link in the chat. I think I never know when you're in a breakout room whether it's only the breakout room that sees it or whether everybody sees it.
It's only the breakout room. Yeah, I want to do one of those one of these days.
Okay, do you want me to put it in everybody's?
Yeah, do it now.
And scroll it.
Yes. Put it in there now.
Okay.
Please. And thank you.
Oops, everybody.
I hope they sue Shimors.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so you either want to do a save chat or copy and paste this so you keep the link. Okay, so does everyone know, anyone need to know how to do a save chat? Or are you good?
Yes, tell us.
Okay, well, if you in Zoom, if you open the chat box which shows up for me on the right, at the bottom, there's where you type in. And so it says to whomever. In my case, it's to everyone. To the right of that, there's a note symbol and a happy face symbol and 3 dots, ... If you click on the ... the top option is to save the chat.
Got it.
Thank you. Say it one more time.
Okay, in the chat where you type to people, where at the bottom it'll say to whomever, like I'm writing to everyone. And to the right of that, there are 3 symbols. There's like a piece of paper turned with the corner turned over, a happy face, and a ... Click on the dot.
It's not available for people on their phone. I'm not sure if iPads have it. So that is the only problem. If you're on your phone, I've had to do screen saves every.
You're on your phone, Carol?
I'm on my phone now. My tablet died, so I had to get off of that and hop in through the phone.
Well, maybe, Galia, if you did the save chat and then emailed it to Carol.
No, I did the copy and paste. I just didn't know how to do the save chat, but thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm taking off. Thank you all.
Thanks so much, Penny.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. We have a good program tomorrow. Hope to see you. Nancy, I'll probably talk to you later, or I'll just finish it and we're good. You're on mute.
I had to do the committees. I didn't see that when I was doing that.
The what?
The committees.
Oh.
The still showing the committees from last year.
Okay, but don't edit it anymore. Send me an email with what you want changed and I'll change it.
Okay.
Because I already started changing it, so.
All right, I'll do that.
Okay, I thought that the environmental justice panel was fabulous.
It was really wonderful. Fabulous. It was excellent. Yeah. It was all excellent. It was a wonderful program.
So what Crystal ended up sending me is like a 7-page document. I'm like,
wow,
I can't read that.
No. Well, it might be, maybe someone could read it tomorrow if we have time.
No.
No.
we don't have allocated a 7-page document, and it didn't even talk about the database. So
oh, it didn't. Oh
no.
Galia?
Yeah.
This is Robin. Roberta has written another resolution. You know.
Oh.
Yeah. our
On
dear.
Robinson.
Yes, yes. So we will do that in the morning, I guess. So I have a couple of questions. Can Lindsay show the text of the, the resolution and the bylaws change,
So
people can see?
Yeah, what we can do is we can do share screen. So I have them posted on the website, but so then Roberta needs to send the new one to me so I can put it on the website so I can show it.
Yeah, okay. I'll email her and tell her she needs to do that. I think she's still editing it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited about that.
Yeah, that's a good thing. So I just wanted to make sure people could see the text of what we're discussing when,
Yeah. And the other thing I can do is if I upload it on the NC Now website, I can send a link to it so then people can just read their own instances of it. That's even better than a share screen because they can, so, but either way, she's got to send it to me.
The other thing is that resolution might spark some discussion. So how can we keep on track, as far as time goes, if that's the case?
Well, it's the same one as last year. What do you think?
No. The one on Robinson is a new one.
Oh.
That's the one that might spark discussion.
Right. Can we do some in the plenary and then some after the panel? Because
not really. You just need to, you can't interrupt the action right in the middle. We'll need to figure. I'll try to figure out a way to put a time limit on the discussion because I don't think there's going to be conflict about, oh no, we shouldn't do this.
Right. Just about wording.
Yeah, about wording and maybe, about wording and maybe about what measures we should take. I made a suggestion to her. She didn't suggest that we say he should resign. I said, with a qualification that if he can't fairly, and represent all North Carolinians, then he should resign.
Absolutely.
There's a qualification.
Because the other thing is, so, we have the keynote and then we have a panel that's pulling people in. And I know that Senator Murdoch and Representative Von Hafen want to go to that event at 12 o'clock at the legislative at Halifax Mall. And
well,
so
what you can do procedurally, you or somebody can say, I think we're ready to vote on this. And that would end the discussion, are we ready to vote kind of thing. As a chair, I can't do that. It has to be somebody moving it, from the audience. So I'm suggesting if we've had enough discussion and the time's getting short, I think we're ready to vote. So I move we vote.
So let me ask Robin, is there a way to do the first resolution and the bylaws changes and then do this resolution after the panel? Like just do the whole thing after the panel?
So you just want to do the resolution that says we're legitimate with our conference, and then we'll do the bylaws change and we'll come back after the panel and we have another resolution we want to consider then?
Yeah.
That'll work.
Because we have a bunch of people speaking and the legislators I know are going to this other thing.
What we can't do is start the discussion of this resolution and break it off and then come back and continue the discussion. I don't think that would work.
Right. Okay. Sounds good. Right.
And I'll email Roberta and say she needs to send you.
Yeah, so I can put it up
resolution. There. Yeah. Okay.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Good night. Goodbye.
Good night. Bye. All right, Nancy. So yeah, I think the program looked good, except the letter,
okay. I'll change that, and I'll make sure we got everything in it.
Okay. If you see changes, you just need to email them to me. Don't change the document because I already started changing it.
All right. All right. Okay. But I'll do that last page, right?
What are you doing on the last page?
The committees.
Just send me the committees. Just send them to me.
Well, they're in the slide.
Oh, okay. So I could get them out of the slide.
Yeah.
It would be easier if you would just send me the text and I'll put it in there.
Okay. Okay, I'll do that.
Okay. Or if
Alright.
you already updated the document, I can pull it out of the one document. But
Well, I mean, I could just do it on that last page and send it to you, and you could pull it, switch out the pages or something.
yeah, I can just pull it out that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, because then it
Okay.
would already be formatted, I guess.
Yeah, it's all ready to go. It's just changing some of the names.
Yeah. Okay, well, that would be
Alright.
okay too.
Alrighty, I'll do that then.
Okay.
I'll send that to you. Alrighty, excellent. Well, it was a
Thanks,
wonderful
Nancy.
evening. You did great. And you went with the flow with all the different technical problems. So then just kept moving along.
Yeah, so I don't know if Crystal sent me the wrong thing, but it was a 6-page, I mean, it was 6 or 7 page, full page document. That would have taken, that would have been like a keynote speech right there.
Yeah, really. How
Or
long was she
longer.
supposed to talk for? Just 2 or 3 minutes?
6 minutes, 6, but
6 minutes, yeah. No, you can't do that in 6 minutes.
No way.
Even
No
if
way.
she was a speed reader.
Right.
All righty. Well, thank
Thanks
you
for
so
all your
much.
help. The slides look gorgeous.
Well, I'm glad. I'm so glad. And everything looks marvelous. So
yeah,
we did good. All right. Take care. See you in the
too. Thank
morning.
you.
See you
Okay.
in the morning.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye. Okay.